Yep, that's it. Have you seen my presentation? Is everything works great?
Yeah, everything all right. Everything all right.
Yeah. So, guys, let's get started. Hello again. I'm glad to see you here at the meetup. I hope that the subject of our today's event will be interesting for you guys and you will learn something new for yourself. My name is Daria. I'm the head of project management office at MetaLamp. As Roman said before, at MetaLamp, we run a complex development of blockchain project at different stages of implementation. For some projects, we launch MVPs, and for others, we modify the already operating solutions. Most recently, we've been focusing on startups that come to us with just a project idea, and we help them to come up with the best solution for each specific case. If you ever had an idea for a Web3 project, you've probably wondered which blockchain is worth entering. So today we'll talk about why it's important to know what network we are deploying on for a blockchain product, how the implementation will differ for different networks, and what risks come with changing the implementation network during the development process, and how much it will cost to develop projects and deploy to different EVM-compatible networks and sidechains. First, let's start with why do we have such a wide variety of networks and sidechains? You probably have all heard about the blockchain trilemma. Unfortunately, every network cannot be equally well scalable, secure, and decentralized. Some things have to be sacrificed. Other doesn't meet the necessary scalability requirements. So sidechains and layer 2 solutions are created to help Ether with the scalability issue. But such solutions are also blockchains, and that means they too are affected by trilemma problem. Before you start developing your project, you definitely need to evaluate what will be necessary for your project and what you are ready to compromise. For example, security is very important for financial projects like DEXs, launchpads, swaps, etc. While for play-to-earn games, scalability, speed, and lower cost of transaction are the priority. Truly decentralized projects will be meaningless if you deploy them to a network that has sacrificed decentralization. Therefore, when thinking about the operation of your project, you must first decide what is crucial for you, what fits the goal of the project, and choose a blockchain based on that. The next question is what language to develop in. The most popular language for developing smart contracts is Solidity. It is used to write contracts for Ether, as well as networks and sidechains that are compatible with Ethereum virtual machine. For other blockchains, you can also use compilers that would convert Solidity into the smart contract development language of a particular network. But today, we'll talk just about the blockchains in which you can deploy your Solidity application. We have a wide range of networks, layer 2 solutions, and sidechains to deploy. And the next decision to make is what to choose, deploying to the main network or deploying to a sidechain. What are the pros and cons of each approach? First, let's clarify what a sidechain is. A sidechain is also an independent blockchain that can have its own parameters of speed, fees, consensus mechanism, and data model of transactions. A sidechain always communicates with the main network for which it was built through bridges, which can move data from the main network to the sidechain and vice versa from the sidechain to a main network. This allows a product running in a sidechain to operate with data received from the main network and gives the advantages of the particular sidechain in terms of transaction speed and lower commissions. A sidechain always has a close connection to the main network. In these turbulent times, it could bring with it certain risks, no matter how reliable a sidechain is. If the main network is compromised, the sidechain is likely to lose users' trust as well. Whether this risk is worth considering when planning project is up to you to decide. It may cause problems in the long term, but in the short term, we can be sure of a network that we trust. Just a second. Oh, okay. As I mentioned before, each sidechain has the advantages of the main network and the additional advantages attached to it. In that case, when we get the benefits of two global products at once, it seems that there shouldn't be any choice between deploying to the main network or to sidechain. We can have both benefits. In practice, however, that's not the case. The developers of the main network, such as Ethereum, don't guarantee security within the sidechains. A similar situation occurs with other networks. Of course, well-known sidechains that are trusted by users provide their own security guarantees. But if your product requires a high level of decentralization and security, it makes sense to turn your attention to deployment to the main network. Another problem with dealing with sidechains is that they are not always quick to implement new tools to make them work on their network. Of course, sidechains often provide some additional infrastructure that is also not available on the main network. But from the development perspective, the lack of tools that developers on the main network are used to can lead to the need of reinventing things, and so increase the time and cost of the development. A prime example here is the unsupportability of popular protocols by some blockchains. For example, Compound cannot be connected to the Polygon, and some solutions from Chainlink are not supported by Gnosis. Of course, it's possible to find alternatives to these protocols, but this will increase product development time if developers are familiar with more popular solutions. Yeah. And when we talk about the lack of infrastructure for development, it's not just about smart contract development solution. We also have to consider the network when thinking about the user experience. The user experience of our service and solution in front end and the backend part. A simple example here is the interaction with browser wallets. In 90% of projects, the interaction with the network from browser is via MetaMask. Developers know exactly how to handle MetaMask-related actions, but some networks has their own browser extensions to handle their network or sidechain, but some networks prefer to use an alternative solutions. In this case, we have to consider what infrastructure user will interact with, how it will affect the steps, what notifications and success signals this or that solution will give to the front-end part or to the back-end part. If such tools are not too popular, but are required to work with a particular network, we will also have to spend more time on the design, integration, and further testing. Speaking about development on Solidity for Ether, I already mentioned such well-known sidechains as Polygon and Gnosis Safe. Each of these sidechains has a number of advantages over the Ether, of the mainnet of Ether. It has high transaction speeds and much cheaper transaction fees, and each sidechain provides additional tools for various solutions in the Web3 world. For example, Gnosis has an extensive infrastructure that makes working with DAO projects much easier. This means that they provide additional infrastructure to solve governance problems and to make the proposals for your project easier and more secure. Polygon is famous for its cheap transactions and high speed, but both sidechains have a large number of users and projects active on them. The advantages of sidechains are really huge, but they can bring non-obvious problems with the way which we may face during the development process. If transactions in our network are very cheap and the application is built not only on smart contracts but has a hybrid solution and implements some logic on the backend part, we have to guess the new solutions to protect the backend from the transaction spam. If transactions has a lower price, users can just spam our application with transactions, and if for smart contract it wouldn't be a problem, for a backend part it will look like a DDoS attack. And we should either adapt the business logic of the application to the network, for example, by increasing the minimum transaction amount, or come up with mechanisms to protect the backend from spam. This is just another development dilemma. If we want to run an application on a network with a minimal gas fees for users to make their lives easier, we must take care of limiting spam with transactions. But if we don't want to think about an extra logic to protect it, we should choose a network with more expensive transactions and spend an extra time and resources to optimize the smart contracts to reduce gas fees for calculations. In parallel to sidechains, you can also turn your attention to a second layer solution, or rollups. Unlike sidechains, rollups are the part of the main network. They fully duplicate the implementation of applications on Ether and allow higher speed and cheaper transactions. Since rollup are a solution above the main network guarantees security within rollups, unlike sidechains. Also, as opposite to sidechains, you don't have to think about additional infrastructure to move assets from one network to another to develop on rollups. All of the main network's assets are safely transferred to the second layer, and popular protocols work just as they do in the main network. Another important advantage of the rollups is the high liquidity of the main network assets. The less popular blockchain is, the less the liquidity it has. Rollups don't have that problem. But nothing great. While we were talking about the risks of compromising the network, it's also important to note that while a sidechain is an independent blockchain, rollups are much more closely linked to the main network, and it means they are more risky to be compromised with the main network too. Moving away from sidechain and rollup solution, we can also look at independent networks that have adapted the EVM solution and allow smart contracts written in Solidity to be deployed without making any additional changes to the code. Such networks include, for example, the Binance Smart Chain. Comparing Binance with Ether, we see the obvious advantages of Binance in terms of transaction fees and speed. However, here we may have questions about decentralization of the network, as well as the availability of a stable infrastructure. When developing applications for Binance, it's important to consider the instability of testnets and take into account the problems inherent in the sidechains, the lack of solutions of popular protocols. With independent EVM-like networks, you may also find it difficult to migrate an application because of the different standards. For example, BP20 is similar to ERC20 standard of token for Ether. However, there are some differences between them that don't globally affect to the functionality of your application, but create some difficulties when migrating an application from one network to another absolutely without changes. If the network we choose is fully EVM compatible, and if the third-party protocols that we use in the product work the same way, no matter what network we use, then moving smart contract from one network to another will not be a problem. So does it mean we can stop not on a particular network, but adapt to the market and change the network as we develop in the product? On one hand, yes, but on the other hand, no. Talking about blockchain project development, usually more attention is given to smart contract development. In fact, Web3 projects is not only about smart contracts, but also about front-end, back-end, business logic, and even UX and UI. It all depends on the network and the way it interacts with it too. The design is developed based on how we see users' behavior. The business logic is developed on the benefits and limitations of the network. If we change the deployment network as we go along, this may require additional resources both from a development perspective and from user experience perspective. A prime example is the functionalities that we developed on one of our projects. That's not the launchpad. Oh no, that was the launchpad. A prime example is the gasless transaction functionality we implemented for a project on Binance Smart Chain. Users didn't pay gas for transactions, paying a one-time fee that covers a certain period of operations. If we move our developed application to Polygon, does it make sense for us to keep the gasless functionality? Probably not, as it wouldn't be a beneficial advantage to the user. Does it make sense to change the logic by increasing the minimum transaction amount? Definitely yes, since we want to avoid spam. As a result, we have to redesign the logic and functionality of the application, and killer features of our product in one network may become useless in another network. This example clearly illustrates that the right network selection does have an impact on the project. Otherwise, why then don't all solutions work on all networks at once, and their multi-chain capability takes time, and sometimes that's a lot of time. So how do you decide where to deploy your project? I suggest you to answer a few basic questions about your product. First is, what is my target audience? What Web3 products does it use? Which network is the majority of my users focused on? Then what does my products require? Security, scalability, or decentralization? How much funds will users spend on gas? What is the minimum amount of transactions through my product that I expected? And do I care about the transaction speed? The next block of questions is, what assets will my user interact with? Will it be just the custom tokens or custom tokens of the project, or a large list of coins from the token list? And the last but not the least, what kind of infrastructure will my project require? Do I trust this solution and their alternatives? When we answered all these questions and decided on the network, we want to understand what the budget and time will be for the project implementation. At MetaLamp, before starting projects, we always do a pre-estimation to know the approximate cost and time of development, as well as to understand what team resources will be needed to implement the client's idea. Let's take a look at how the decision to choose a network affects to the final cost of the product. Let's imagine we want to develop a cryptocurrency payment system for goods and services. If we are talking about MVP, it's just all we need is just to develop a couple of smart contracts that provide storage of incoming assets for users who accept these payments, and provide an easy way to deposit and withdraw your assets. Our target audience is people who sell and buy goods and services in a regular fiat market. They prefer to operate with stable coins. So we are taking into account only stable coins for this project. Do we need to understand at this stage which network we are operating in? Yes, we do. Because the application will operate not with its own tokens, but with those that have been already in use for a long time. What is important to us here? Goods and services are different, and their cost can also be different. It will be strange for the service if the gas price will be higher than the payment for a good or service. In that case, we settle on a network where gas is inexpensive and where there are a large number of users and where stablecoins are common. So our choice fell on the Binance Smart Chain, and we evaluated the MVP development project. Development of an MVP version of such a product could take a couple of months and cost about $10K for the smart contract development and about $4K for turnkey work. Such products have a quite clear ability to scale, and we have to take into account the future development of the service, even on the early stages of the project. For example, one of the possible ways of development is kind of reinvestment of tokens that come into a service from buyers. We can connect existing and well-known liquidity protocols so that sellers can send their funds there, and we can get a percentage of their income from this reinvesting. The client suggested connected the AEVA protocol. So we were already in development. If we were already in development, we would have had to change something because this protocol doesn't work in Binance Smart Chain. But since we were still on the planning stage of the future project, we could take a step back and make a new network selection. Another user story that was important here for the future development was the ability to accept any tokens, not just stablecoins. In that case, it would be better to lead the development on an either sidechain or rollup, into which tokens can be easily transferred from the main network. We opted for a Polygon for this project and make some user flow and adopt the user flow for the Polygon network. We completed the evaluation of the project to integrate an additional functionality for the future versions. And the total time of the project implementation was about 4 months and would have cost about $80,000. If we hadn't discussed the terms of scaling the service in advance, after launching the MVP in Binance Smart Chain, we would have had to recreate some of the functionality and adapt it to the new network, transferring users there, or search for alternative protocols that we want to implement in this project. These are all risks that we can handle at the start of the project.
Daria, everything all right?
I hope yes, but my laptop is freezed.
Oh,
do you hear
okay.
me?
We can hear you and we can see you, so you can proceed.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay, so these risks we can take in our mind before starting the project implementation and keep in mind during the working with this project. But it's always better to understand beforehand what kind of networks we are making for our product for. So if you have an idea of a blockchain startup, but you don't fully understand how exactly your service will work, feel free to contact us. We will analyze your project and offer the best solutions for your idea. Time, that's all for me. So if you have any question, I would like to answer them.